Okay, find a spot to lie down on your back. Remember, find a relatively hard surface underneath is better because you can feel more, but have something soft, like you can do it on carpet or have blankets, something that gives you a little bit of softness. So just lie down on your back and take a moment to scan yourself. Feel from the tip of your tailbone to the top of your head, the length of your spine. And what does your back feel like today on the ground? What's the weight, the width of your back? What parts of your back are touching and what parts are not? Is your lower back touching, or is there space between your lower back and the floor? How much space? Just feel for yourself. And without changing anything, just feel how you're breathing at this moment. And now take your 2 feet, put your feet standing, bend your knees, and find a spot that's comfortable for your knees to stand so you can play around. Move your feet out and in and further away from your pelvis and then closer to your pelvis. Find a spot where your knees just feel comfortable and there's no effort in your legs to hold up your legs. And now start with a small movement of just rolling your pelvis up. So what you're going to do is roll your tailbone, roll your pelvis up. You're going to lift your tailbone away from the floor. Your lower back will press more into the floor, and then you let that go and come back to neutral. Slowly roll your pelvis up. Your abdomen will go in a little and then come back to neutral. Do that a few times. And just feel if the force of your pelvis is being translated through your spine to your head. Do you feel your head at all moving up and down at all? Do you feel your chin moving up and down at all? Just feel. If at this point you don't feel anything, that's totally okay. And make sure your breathing's totally easy and continuous while doing all these movements. If you ever start noticing you're holding your breath, do less. And now go the other way. Now roll your pelvis down. So now you're going to roll your pelvis downwards, pushing the tailbone down into the table, or not into the table, sorry, into the ground, into your mat, and feel your belly dropping down in between your legs. So you're going to roll your pelvis down, and now there's going to be space between your lower back and the floor. So you're going to arch your lower back and then come back to neutral. And just feel how here, when you roll your pelvis down, how it really helps to drop your belly. It really helps to let your belly be free. So use your belly, drop it push it between your legs as you roll your pelvis down and then back to neutral. And again, make sure you're not doing a movement that's extremely big. Just do a movement that's comfortable for you and really within the range of motion that's really comfortable for you. Rolling the pelvis down and then back. And now combine those 2 movements. Now you're going to roll your pelvis up and lift the tailbone away from the floor. You're going to press your lower back more into the floor. And then you're going to roll your pelvis down, pressing the tailbone into the floor, letting your belly drop in between the legs, rolling your pelvis up and down. And feel one time how when you roll your pelvis up, you can help with your feet. See if you can help with your feet when you roll your pelvis up and then you roll your pelvis down. And again, listen if you can feel the force being translated through your spine and your head moving up and down a little. And if you can't, that's also okay. Just see if you can feel that though. And now let your legs lie long, rest. So these movements are really learning to use the center of yourself and differentiate the center of yourself. So having more mobility and freedom of movement within the pelvis and lower back. And anytime you improve this area, your center, that trickles down into all other movements, right? The movements of your arms will improve. The movements of your legs will improve because you've improved the core. And this is where your power comes from, is your core, your pelvis. Not your core belly, but your core of your pelvis. So now again, put your feet standing, bend your knees. Now this time, imagine your pelvis is on a clock. So 12 o'clock is where your lower back is. 6 o'clock is where your tailbone is. 3 o'clock is to the left, and 9 o'clock is to the right. And so imagine there's a clock right underneath your pelvis. And now start rolling the pelvis, shifting it. So when your pelvis is at neutral, the clock is at neutral. But then you can shift your pelvis, roll your pelvis up to 12 o'clock, lift the tailbone, and then come back to neutral. So just do that same movement like we've been doing, but now you're imagining there's a clock underneath your pelvis. And you're shifting the weight up onto 12 and then back to neutral, rolling your pelvis up and then back. And really visualize the shifting of weight up onto 12 o'clock. And notice, are you doing the movement more with your feet, pressing through the feet, or are you helping with your abdomen, pulling your abdomen to roll the pelvis up? Just find what works better for you. It'll probably be a combination of both, pressing through the feet and rolling the pelvis up with the abdomen. And now roll the pelvis down to 6 o'clock. Again, imagining 6 o'clock, shifting the weight of your pelvis and rolling it down to 6, and then coming back. So you push the tailbone will go down towards into the floor, the lower back will arch, the belly will be free, and then you come back to neutral, rolling it down onto 6 and then back. Making sure that you're going within your comfortable range. Do not force. It's totally not about quantity, how big the movement is. It's really about the quality and the precision of the movement. 6 o'clock and back. And now combine the two movements. Go 6 o'clock and 12 o'clock. Imagine the whole time those numbers on the clock. We're going to 12, rolling the pelvis up, and then going to 6, rolling the pelvis down. The whole time, make sure your breathing is easy. See if each time you do the movements, they can become softer and smoother and easier. And just lay your legs down long. Let your legs lengthen. And again, just feel yourself in lying. Take inventory of your imprint on the floor. And now again, bend your knees, put your feet standing. Now this time you're going to roll your pelvis over to 3 o'clock to the left. So in order to do this, start with a small movement, and you're going to use the lower back more on the right side to roll your pelvis to the left and then come back. The main constraint that with this movement is do not drop your knees in. So what we're doing here is we're moving the pelvis around the hip joints. We're moving the pelvis around the femurs, around the legs. So your pelvis will roll to the left to 3 o'clock and then come back. And really use your abdomen. Use your abdomen, push your abdomen out as you use your lower back to roll your pelvis to the left and then back. Roll your pelvis to the left and then back. You can help by pushing through your foot. Feel that if you actually press through the right foot, it helps that. It helps the right hip lift, the right side of the pelvis lift, and then you come back. And if you start dropping the knees to the left, do less. Do less so you do not drop the knees to the left. And now roll the pelvis to the right. So now roll it to 9 o'clock. And imagine that clock. Imagine rolling it over on to 9 o'clock, and then back to neutral, back to the middle. And now this time you're using the left side of the lower back more. You're using the left side of the lower back. Remember the constraint of keeping your knees directed towards the ceiling. Do not drop your knees to the right. So just roll that pelvis over onto 9 and then back to neutral. And make sure you're imagining that clock, imagining you're rolling it right onto the number 9 and then back. Over onto 9 and then back. Breathing is easy. And now combine the two movements. Now slow, roll to 3 and then to 9. Go nice and slow. Go at your own rate. Move however much you can move that's comfortable. Do not go past your comfort range. Feel that your knees start to move like scissors, right? So one time the right knee comes towards you and the left knee goes away. And then the next time the right knee goes the opposite direction. The right knee, what did I say before? So one time the right knee goes away and then the right knee comes towards. And then the left knee goes away and the left knee comes towards as you roll your pelvis from 3 to 9. Feel one side of the lower back works and then the other side of the lower back works. Feel that your knees are always directed towards the ceiling, but you're reaching one time with one knee and then you're reaching with the other knee. But also pay attention to that clock, 9 and 3. And now do it kind of smaller but faster. Go 3, 9, 3, 9. Just rock back and forth gently. Free your belly. And then let the legs lie long and just rest. And feel how you're resting. Feel how the back, feel if more of your back is starting to come in contact with the floor. If some of those muscular contractions that you've been holding are starting to let go. And now slowly roll through your side and come up now onto your elbows and hands and have the feet together like this. So you're going to be on your elbows and forearms and you're going to have the soles of your feet together. Now, if this is uncomfortable, being in a position like this, you can come up just into sitting and lean on your hands behind you, but that's going to be the next variation. So if you can, come into this position here. And now feel that just first start rolling your pelvis down to 6 o'clock. So down to 6 and then coming back. So you're pressing the tailbone into the floor, rolling it down to 6, freeing the abdomen, and then coming back to neutral. And in this position, if your chest is really stiff and up, it's the head becomes heavy. So let the chest sink down, let the ribs sink down so the head can be vertical, right? So you're not using your neck muscles. And roll that pelvis down to 6 and then come back. Are you breathing in or are you breathing out as you roll it down to 6 and then come back to neutral? Roll it down to 6, back to neutral. And now roll it up to 12. So now roll the pelvis up to 12 and then back to neutral. Roll the pelvis up to 12, pull the abdomen in, then roll it back to neutral. Roll the pelvis up to 12 and then back to neutral. Feel your lower back, how it rounds and then comes to neutral more. Feel how your ribs can sink down, the chest and clavicles can sink down. And now lie on your back and rest. Don't stay too long in that position because it is a difficult position to be in, especially if there's contractions around the ribs, the sternum, and if this area of your chest is stiff. Now just lie, take a few breaths, rest. And now again, come back up onto your elbows and forearms, soles of the feet together. Now, this time, combine the two movements. So roll your pelvis down to 6 on that clock. Imagine that clock is still under your pelvis, and then up to 12. You round and arch. Tailbone goes into the floor, and then you tuck the tailbone. Make sure your breathing is easy and soft. See if you can keep the head vertical. So when you roll the pelvis down, when you go to 6, don't drop your head back. If you start dropping your head back, do less. Keep the head vertical and just roll the pelvis down and then up. Down and then up. Now, if you ever need to rest, if you're starting to really get tired here, rest. So just really take care of yourself. That's very important. Six and 12. And now rest. Lie long rest. And again, imagine that clock under your pelvis just as you're resting. Again, get reacquainted with those numbers. 12 at your lower back, 6 at your tailbone, 3 is to your left, and 9 is to your right. And then again, come up onto your elbows and forearms, soles of the feet together. Now this time, roll your pelvis to the left. So roll your pelvis over to the left to 3 o'clock and then back to neutral. Roll it to 3, push out the abdomen, and then come back to neutral. Make sure and feel that the head stays vertical, and also feel how you use one side of the lower back more. One knee will drop down and the other knee will come up. Roll to 3 and then back. And now roll to 9. So roll to 9, roll to the other side. Roll to 9 and then back. Just a small movement. The smaller the movement, the better. It doesn't have to be, it's not about doing a big movement. It's about doing a precise and easy movement. We're looking for easy and comfortable. 9 o'clock and back. Now come up into sitting. Have the soles of your feet together. You can either have your fingertips pointing away from you or towards the front, toward ahead of you, but just whatever's comfortable. I like having my hands like this, with my fingers pointing behind. And now, so have your feet either, the closer the feet are to your pelvis, the more difficult it is, but just explore for where it's easy for you, right? And so, soles of the feet together. Now roll your pelvis forward to 6 and then come back to neutral. Roll your pelvis forward to 6 and come back to neutral. Feel how you come up on your ischium, on those sits bones, and you get taller. You free the abdomen and then you come back. You use your lower back, you get taller, and then you come back. And now roll your pelvis the other way. Round, go to 12. Round, come up to 12, and then come back to neutral. Round, go to 12 o'clock, and then come back to neutral. Feel how your chest can drop down, the sternum can drop down, the ribs sink down. What are you doing with your breathing? Make sure your breathing's easy. Now combine the two. Roll the pelvis forward, free the abdomen, roll to 6 and 12, and roll back to 12. Roll to 6, then roll to 12. Get that pelvis moving, get that lower back working. You feel that the lower back is so crucial in so many movements, and the more we can get our lower back working, then sitting becomes easier, walking becomes easier, reaching for stuff in the cupboard becomes easier. And now, go to the left. So now roll your pelvis to 3 o'clock. Feel that one knee will come up. You'll roll your pelvis to 3. The lower back on the right side will work more. And then come back to neutral. Roll that pelvis to 3. And then back to neutral. Go nice and slow. Always, always, always put quality ahead of quantity. And now roll the pelvis to the right to 9 o'clock. Feel how actually the left sits bone will lift a little, right? And the right knee will go down. You'll use the left side of the lower back. The lower abdomen will, you actually even kind of push your lower abdomen out towards that knee. And imagine again that clock going to 9 and then back to neutral. And now combine the two. 9 and 3, right and left, using one side of the lower back and then the other. Notice how your head can stay directly in the center and you're just walking kind of on your tush, shifting the weight, rolling the pelvis onto 3 to the left and then 9 to the right. 3 to the left, 9 to the right. And now, just come back on your elbows and forearms, soles of the feet together, and just roll your pelvis forward and back and see, is that any easier? Remember, keep the head vertical. Just notice, is that any easier for you? For me, it feels easier, but just notice for you, what does it feel like? And now roll to lie on your back again. Roll to lie on your back and rest. And again, feel your lower back. If your lower back feels like it's making more contact with the floor, more of your lower back muscles have let go and everything's starting to sink more. Give up to gravity. Now, bend your knees, put your feet standing. Roll your pelvis up to 12 and start rolling it towards 1 o'clock and then 2 o'clock. And then back 2, or back 1, then 12. So you're starting, roll your pelvis up to 12, then 1, 2, back to 1, and then 12, and then back to neutral. Lift that tailbone up, roll the pelvis up, go to 1, 2, 1, 12, back to neutral. Roll the pelvis up, go 1, 2 to 3 to the left. And notice how there's going to be a shift. You're going to shift from flexing your spine and the pelvis will be rolled up to a little bit of extension on the right side, or arching on the right side of your lower back as you go to 3. And then you're going to come back 3, 2, 1 to 12. So we're doing the upper left hand of the clock on your pelvic clock. And make sure, again, the knees are directed towards the ceiling and go nice and slow. And feel if there's any hour that you kind of go clunk, clunk over. Any hour that feels a little rusty, and lubricate it around that hour. So go back and forth. If it's 1, go 1, 2, and then 2 to 1, and then 1 to 12. Work around that hour, making it easier, making it smooth. And feel for yourself. Just play with it. Go 12, 1, 2 to 3 to the left. And then the abdomen comes back in when you go back 2, 1 to 12. And then back to neutral. And then again, 12, 1, 2 to 3. And then 3, 2, 1, 12. And then let your legs down long, rest. Take a breath, breathe. Just feel the stillness of the moment. And then put your feet standing. Now this time again, roll your pelvis up to 12 and take it to 11. So roll your pelvis up 12, 11 to 10, back 11 to 12. And again on this side, so do that a few times, but I'm just going to explain. So any hour on this side too that feels a little rusty or problematic, work around that hour. Whenever we try speeding through something, we're skipping over something that's very important. So here, that's where we'll really improve our skill and improve our pelvis. But if you just skip over it, if you feel, oh, that area is hard and rusty and I'm just going to forget about it, then we aren't really dealing with the problem or where you could really improve. So work around that hour that's problematic for you. Get it nice and smooth. So now go 12, 11, 10, and over to 9 to the right, and then back 9, 10, 11, 12. 12, 11, 10, 9 to the right. So now we're doing the upper right corner of our clock, right? So now you're doing the upper right corner of the clock, making sure that it's easy and soft and smooth, and don't sail over those hours. Remember those problematic hours. Come back, work on them. Go just super slow and small. The smaller the movement, the better. And doing those tiny small movements will actually make those hours really smooth and easy. And that will really improve your lower back movement and the movement of your pelvis. It'll just give it way more depth in your brain maps. Okay, so now rest one more time. Just rest for a moment. Take a breath. Bend your knees, put your feet standing. This time, roll your pelvis up to 12 and go 12, 1, 2, 3 to the left, and then come back 3, 2, 1, 12, then go 12, 11, 10, 9. So you're doing the whole upper half. Now go very slow. I said that quickly, but go very slow, right and left, and make sure you're feeling and imagining that clock go over every hour. Right? So 12, 11, 10, 9, 9, 10, 11, 12. Then 1, 2, 3, and 3, 2, 1, 12. Working that whole upper clock. And then just let that lie long and rest for one more moment. Let everything go. Let your jaw go. Let your tongue relax. Feel your breathing. Feel the length of your spine. Does your spine feel like it's any longer? Do you feel like more of your back is making contact with the floor now? And then one more time, bend the knees, put the feet standing. And one more time, check in and do a reference movement of what we did at the beginning. Roll your pelvis to 6 and 12 and feel if that's easier, if that's smoother, and if the force of your pelvis is being translated up through your spine to your head more easily now. So feel that. Roll your pelvis up and down and feel if that's easier for you now. 6 and 12. You roll the pelvis up, detach the tailbone from the floor. You roll the pelvis down, push the tailbone into the floor. Round and arch your lower back. Roll that pelvis. And now just do a few quick movements. It feels a lot easier for me, but just feel for you. Just roll it up and down, up and down. And then let that go. Rest one last time. And then that's the end of the lesson. So you can continue just lying there resting or just come up into standing. Thanks for joining me for today's lesson at Move to Thrive. I hope it benefited you in some way.